everyone, welcome to the Dill Pickle Movie Network. I am Dylan Randazzo, and welcome to a video that I love to do every single year. It's probably my favorite video to do every single year, but it is one that is very daunting, one that gives me restless nights, one that has me really just checking the books, hitting the books. I mean, this whole pad is filled of just predictions and stats upon predictions and stats. So this is a very daunting task, but I love to do it every year, and that is the Oscar nomination predictions. I find it almost more fun to predict the nominees than I do the winners, because the winners at a certain point become so obvious, and there's maybe 4 or 5 categories that might be a 50-50 shot. But here it's like, you're predicting 5 of like 12 or 15 options. And for Best Picture, you're picking 10 of essentially every movie that was released that year that is eligible. So it's really fun to just kind of look at the trends, look at the stats, see who's in the lead in terms of precursors, but also understanding that there are still so many different defying stats breakers out there. I mean, look at Margot Robbie last year for Barbie being that stat breaker who did not get in. Look at Andrea Riseborough a few years ago who got in. I keep talking about Best Actress because that's going to be one of the 2 main categories that we're going to focus a lot of our attention on. Actress and supporting actress in particular, I have agonized over because I legitimately think there are 6 definitive actress nominees and about 8 definitive supporting actress nominees. And right now we have to narrow it down. That is the most agonizing part about award season and about these predictions. But I did want to show my love and respect, and my heart does go out to all of the people suffering in Los Angeles due to the fires. It is still an ongoing issue. There was a lot of recovery. It is going to be a big issue for the next couple of months. So the fact that these Oscar nominations were delayed, I have no animosity. I am not upset. The fact that the Oscars themselves could potentially become delayed, I'm not upset. I think we all need to start focusing on what the priorities are. And right now it's the safety and health of all the people who have been negatively affected by the fires. So if your first instinct for any of these delays of nominations or delays of predictions or delays of videos is, damn, those LA fires ruined my Oscar season, then I politely ask you to stop watching this video, because I am more than happy to put all of this, all the stacks and stacks of notes to the side if it means showing my support and helping those in need. So I just wanted to say that first point blank, because I know a lot of people are like, oh, Dylan, where's your video? And I said, well, the Oscar nominations are delayed, so I'm going to delay my video a little bit. And they're like, but come on, like, just because of the fires, blah, blah, blah. Like, no, like, that is a big issue. The Oscars always come second to real life shit. The Oscars are great, and it's a great escape, and hopefully for a lot of these people it'll be a great kind of positive to all the negatives going on in the world. But we also have to acknowledge that these are major negatives. A lot of people losing their homes, a lot of people losing their livelihoods. So I just wanted to make that statement clear, because I know there's been such an uncomfortable discourse about all the Oscar delays and all the wildfires and how they've impacted the Oscar race. And I think the only plus, if you had to say that there was a plus to all this, is that it has given a few contenders a little more time to make their campaigns, to get their voices heard, to get their faces seen. I think of Fernanda Torres, from I'm Still Here, someone who won the Globe and then had this extra week to kind of campaign and show her face and get out there and go on talk shows and become more of a contender, to where I think she is one of the locks for Best Actress. And I'll get there in a sec, but I just wanted to say, once again, my heart is with all of those who are suffering. If you are suffering, there are so many great sources available to help. I will link some in the description below if you want to show some aid or help for those in need. And this is not just an issue in California. It happens all around the world. So it is something to just be mindful of, that sometimes the real world is a little more important than our little Oscar shows. And we love our Oscars. We love our award shows. But I think that's something that just needs to be said and reminded, as this is a very tough time to navigate, especially with this big change politically we have going on in the real world as well. It's time to dive into these Oscar nomination predictions. And here's the thing. I'm never going to be perfect with these predictions. I doubt I'm going to go perfect in many of these categories. The goal is always 4 out of 5. Because if you can predict 4 out of 5 and you're wrong with one surprise, that's not a big deal. It's when you get 3 out of 5 where you're like, man, I should have seen some of these coming. I should have been prepared for that snub or prepared for that surprise. And I think a lot of the times we as Oscar pundits want to just like immediately go for what the big, bold upset picks could be. But the problem is when we do that and we take some of the safe people off the board, it then makes the likelihood of us getting everything right wrong, because if they go go with the safe option, then you're going for a 2 or a 3 out of 5 than you are a 4 or a 5. So right now, my goal is to just get 4 out of 5 on as many predictions as I can. If I can get 5 out of 5, that's awesome. I already know I've got animated, because if it's anything but the 5 that we're predicting for animated, I would be shocked. So the goal is really just 4 for 5. If I can get 1 wrong, I'll be upset, but any more than 1 wrong and I'm devastated. So this is just kind of how my brain works. I want to get at least 4 out of 5 for all these predictions. And for picture, I want to get 9 out of 10, because I think for picture, 8 slots are locked and there's 2 up for grabs. So if I can just nail one of those 2, I'll be really happy. Again, going perfect in a category is excellent, but I'm not necessarily putting myself on that pedestal. If you are using me as a resource to help you predict, I hope I give you enough information to inform your predictions. Do not copy mine. I have not copied anyone else's. I've looked at other people's predictions just to kind of get a sense of what people are predicting. I think it's important to look at different sources, not just get all your information from one source. But if I am that source, thank you for joining me. Let's start a little bit toward the back of the pack, because I want to get some of these kind of miscellaneous categories out of the way. Not to say that they aren't important categories, but they're definitely the ones that I feel the least researched on as I flip through my many pages of notes. So let's get into the short films, just kind of knock these out right now. Obviously, the easiest way to go 4 out of 5 on these is to quite literally just copy the Gold Derby top 5. And Gold Derby, if you don't know, is a site where they have all the odds listed. Those are betting odds. If you are in a betting state, you can bet on the Oscars. It's a really fun thing I do every year, since I do live in New Jersey and we get to bet. Again, I don't advocate for betting unless you are responsible and you are 21 and you are able, but it is a fun way to kind of keep yourself invested in Oscar season if you have a little bit of money on the line. And when I say a safe bet, I mean maybe throw a couple bucks on a certain nominee. Don't risk your whole bank account. I put $10 on Anthony Hopkins to win Best Actor for The Father, and I walked away with a couple hundred. So it can have a big payout, but don't put too much on these bets. But regardless, back to what I was saying, Gold Derby is kind of the source where you can get all those betting odds. And for what I like to do for the Oscar predictions, especially for shorts, is I like to just take whatever the top 5 are on Gold Derby, which tends to be the consensus amongst everyone, and swap out one of the nominees. Because in that case, I don't think it's going to go 5 for 5 of Gold Derby. So if I can predict which one's going to miss and swap it in with one of my own, what I kind of did is I kind of looked through each of the subjects of these shorts to see what the message pictures are, what are some of the movies that are going to kind of grab the voters' attention if they're not watching these shorts and they're just merely researching them and looking them up like we are here as we're predicting them. I am going to do my Oscars death race this year, so I will actually get to watch these documentaries and these animated and live actions. But let's start with documentary. The Gold Derby top 5, they have the one about Ukraine, Once Upon a Time in Ukraine. They have I Am Ready, Warden. They have Michaela's Voice. They have Incident, and they have Death by Numbers. Looking at these 5, thinking about which one I want to swap out. First, I have to think about what I want to swap in, and I was looking at Chasing Rue. Chasing Rue, the person who made that documentary short, is a 2-time previous nominee, so I felt really good. I think for the short film categories especially, they like some of their repeated nominees. They don't love populist picks. They don't love these big names. I mean, Wes Anderson was an anomaly last year in the live action category, but I think they do like at least some of these short filmmakers who only make short films. I think they like to keep them in the cycle. So I think Chasing Rue is going to get in. So I'm thinking about what I'm going to take out. I mean, the Ukraine documentary, it's such a prevalent issue. Ukraine, the war is still going on there. Incident is about police brutality, so I'm keeping that in. Death by Numbers is about school shooting. Again, when you think about the topics, it's very clear which ones I think have the edge here. I Am Ready, Warden is about the death penalty, which I think is a big issue, but there was a short that covered that last year as well. So in the animated category. So I'm not 100% sure that's the one I'll keep. And then we also have Michaela's Voice, which I've heard a little bit of controversy around, but it is a Netflix short, and I think Netflix is also a big thing to push here. So you know what? I'm going to take I Am Ready, Warden out of my 5. I'm doing this kind of live. I'm shifting it around on Awards Expert as I'm talking to you now. So this is all fluent. You're getting the final graphic on the screen now, but I'm fluently changing my predictions as I talk. So I'm going to put Chasing Rue in, and I'm going to put that instead of I Am Ready, Warden, and call that a day. So those are going to be my top 5 predictions there. Once Upon a Time in Ukraine, Incident, Death by Numbers, Michaela's Voice, A Letter to the World, and Chasing Rue. So now moving on to live action short. The Gold Derby top 5 is A Man Who Could Not Remain Silent, The Masterpiece in Orange from Jaffa, Anuja, and Dovecote. I decided I think I'm going to take Dovecote out because I haven't gotten a lot of research on that. What I'm looking at is some of these other ones. I mean, A Lion is about ice, which is a pretty prevalent thing as well. Room Taken, this one doesn't have really like an issue. It's not an issue movie, but it does have, this. It tells the story of like this homeless guy living with this blind woman. It kind of reminds me of that short from a few years ago where the little person was taking the bus with the transgender person, like one of those like not message pictures, but one of those like diversity pictures where it's like two misrepresented or underrepresented minorities or something kind of joining together, like kind of a heartwarming, endearing short. I heard Anuja is also very feel good, so I don't necessarily know if I want a lot of feel good shorts in here. I feel like the shorts, they tend to lean a little bit more drab and depressing than they do feel good. So honestly, between Anuja and Room Taken, I think I'm going to put Room Taken in. That just feels like the more Oscar-y short. Sometimes you don't have to think about what the better one's going to be, more so what the Oscar-y one is going to be. So I'm going to put Room Taken in my 5. And you know what? A Lion, even though it's not in the Gold Derby top 5, I feel still really good about that because of the ICE issue. So I'll take The Man Who Remained, Could Not Remain Silent. I'll keep that one in. I'll keep The Masterpiece because I've heard that's just genuinely a really, really good short. It's about class tensions. If you look at the poster, it actually looks like the house from Parasite. So I don't know. I just got a good vibe from that. The Orange from Jaffa is a Palestinian story. It's about the Palestine War. So like that could be controversial for some people, but I think there's going to be enough people who are in support of at least exploring that issue and that divide. So I think that'll get in. So yeah, I'm going to go with that. So I'm going to put The Masterpiece at the top just because I've heard the best things about it. Then I'll put the Gold Derby number 1, The Man Who Cannot Remain Silent. Then I'll put an Orange from Java. Then I'll have A Lion and Room Taken. So this actually, I go 3 out of 5 with Gold Derby, but it's just, I haven't seen enough passion for Dovecote and Anuja. I don't know. I just don't think there's going to be a ton of feel good shorts in these shorts. I think if anything, the feel good shorts will come for animated, which let's segue now to animated. I think the big name here on the board is Me, the dude Don Hertzfeldt short. If you don't know who Don Hertzfeldt is, he is one of the most trailblazing animators working right now. I love his movies. So I really want to see Me get in. Me is actually not part of the Gold Derby top 5. I'll tell you what the Gold Derby top 5 is right now. A Bear Named Wojak is number 1, and that actually makes a lot of sense because it's about an animal. They love their animal shorts. I mean, look at the Robin from a few years ago. What was the one that won last year? The War Is Over, the little pigeon. So they love their animal shorts. So I'm going to keep that at number 1 for sure. They also have, Beautiful Men, Yuck, Wander to Wander, A Crab in the Pool. Okay, I also think for animated short, it's important to also look at the names. For some reason, the animated shorts, they love their kind of crazy eccentric names. I mean, look at the ostrich one from a few years ago. I forget the title. It was a very long title. There's 2 titles here that I feel like feel very animated short Oscar-y, and that's Yuck and A Crab in the Pool. I think those 2 titles just feel so, eccentric. Wander to Wander is a stop motion short, so I definitely want one of those represented as well. So you know what? I feel good with those 4. A Bear Named Wojak, Wander to Wander, Yuck, and A Crab in the Pool. And then you know what? I'm going to put in Me. This is a bit of a hope diction because I want to get to watch it, and it's a Don Hertzfeldt short. He's someone who's been nominated before. I think sometimes when you are the popular name in the category, it could be a bad thing. But for now, I'm going to keep him in, and I guess that leaves out Beautiful Men, which I don't know much about. Maybe Elephants is also a past nominee, so that could get in. But again, these short film categories, I just don't know a ton about them. So I'm going to kind of go off of Gold Derby, go off of some things I've heard from some people, and that's where I'll keep it for now. Let's move on to the documentary feature, and then animated feature, and then international feature, since those kind of pair up with the shorts a little bit. So looking at documentary feature, this is always tough to predict because, first off, the precursors are a little different because we're not just looking at BAFTA or Critics' Choice or DGA. We're looking at stuff like Cinema Eye and IDA and Gotham, because those are sometimes the stats that line up. Now, in this category, notoriously, they've always snubbed my favorite. So if my favorite doc is here, there's a good chance it's getting snubbed. And this year, that is The Remarkable Life of Evelyn. But this is one of those years where honestly, I have 2 docs that I would be devastated if they missed. The other is Daughters. So I feel like logistically, I should predict one of them to miss. But I think it's always fun when I put them in my 5 and they miss anyway, because one of these years, they're not going to miss, and I'm going to predict them to miss, and then I'm going to be really upset that I didn't predict them. So this year, I'm going to stay true to my guns and stay true to my heart and predict both of them to get in. I mean, Daughters, it's gotten the DGA, it got the Cinema Eye, it got BAFTA. The thing it missed, I think, was IDA. So I think Daughters is definitely vulnerable. And then Evelyn, it did get IDA. It also got the Sundance Award, but it also missed BAFTA. So I really don't feel good about Evelyn or Daughters, to be honest with you. But honestly, I am so hoping at least one of them gets in. So for me, I'm putting them both in, knowing one will probably get snubbed, knowing both of them likely will probably get snubbed, but hoping that they both make it in. As for the others, I mean, No Other Land is still number one. It's the one that's sweeping everything. I'd be shocked if it didn't make it in. If No Other Land doesn't make it in, then it shows that the documentary branch is truly rogue, because they snub the frontrunner every single year. And this would be like a next level snub, because this is not only one that's been nominated everywhere, but it's been winning pretty much every critics prize there is. Looking at other documentaries that have been nominated everywhere, I mean, Sugar Cane was nominated at IDA, Cinema Eye, Gotham, DGA. Black Box Diaries was at IDA, BAFTA, Cinema Eye. Soundtrack to a Coup d'etat was at DGA, IDA, Indie Spirits, Cinema Eye, Gotham. You know what? I think Soundtrack to a Coup d'etat actually has a little bit more than Black Box Diaries. So you know what? I think, am I going to make Black Box Diaries the snub here and put in Soundtrack to a Coup d'etat? Because we got to have at least a huge snub in here. And I'm trying to think of what the world would be pissed off with if it's snubbed. And honestly, it's probably Daughters or Evelyn. You know what? I'm going to keep the top three as they are. I'm going to keep Soundtrack to a Coup d'etat on the outside, even though it did get the DGA nomination. I think that's huge. But right now, I don't know. Honestly, the fact is there are a lot of great documentaries this year. You'll notice Will and Harper is not here. In all honesty, they just don't go for the celebrity pick. The fact that it got shortlisted is a huge win in and of itself. Documentary, I never know what to do with. So do not copy me for documentary, because I'm going to be totally wrong. I can just tell you right now. Let's move on to international, though, because there's some interesting stuff going on with international too. Emilia Perez, it's winning. It's done. That's getting in. I'm still here. I would also be shocked if it didn't make it in, especially now that Fernanda Torres, I think, is going to be a lock for actress, which then leaves a few other vulnerable titles. I think Kneecap is one that a lot of people are predicting. It had a great day at BAFTA. My only hesitancy, though, for Kneecap is that BAFTA, it is a British thing. It is an Irish film. So, of course, BAFTA was going to be a little higher on it. I think a lot of people are reading into BAFTA and thinking it's still a top contender. I still think if it gets in, it's number 4 or 5. I don't think it's number 3. I do think there is still a strong shot that Kneecap will get in. I am just a little nervous. I'm a little nervous because I think BAFTA just kind of put it on this huge pedestal. But I think because it's a British film, we have to kind of keep an arm's distance from it. But The Quiet Girl a few years ago got in. So I still think Kneecap will get in, but I'm putting it at my number 5. I'm actually a little more confident in Vermiglio. I think a lot of people are scrapping it from their predictions, but the truth is Italian films do really well in this category, and they are a little bit more artsy than some of your more fun kind of crowd pleasers. Like, I know How to Make Millions Before Grandma Dies is like a very trendy title right now that a lot of people want to predict. A lot of people are predicting Flow as this pairing with international and animated, but I just think for some reason they kind of go more for the darker, more serious films than they do the more fun ones. At least that has been the trend I've noticed, especially last year. I mean, all the international films were just so dark. It was like Zone of Interest and The Teacher's Lounge and Io Capitano, like all these really dark films. So looking at that trend, I'm also going to still predict Seed of the Sacred Fig. I've heard a lot of people predicting it as a shocking snub. I would be totally devastated if it missed. It is my favorite international film of the year, so I'd be really sad if it missed. But looking at some of the other films that have missed in past years, I mean, Decision to Leave was a big one that missed. A Hero missed a few years ago. So it would not be out of the norm for them to snub something that's been getting in everywhere else. And also the fact that Sacred Fig didn't have a really good BAFTA showing makes me a little nervous. So I do think any of those could be vulnerable. Sacred Fig, Vermiglio, or Kneecap, but that's ultimately what I'm going to go with. What's on the outside, though, to keep an eye on? The Girl with the Needle, it's been getting a lot of good buzz. It was a Cannes movie, too, and I think Cannes Film Festival movies always tend to do really well. There's usually at least 2 Cannes films in the mix. So this year I'm predicting Sacred Fig and Emilia Perez as those 2, but you could easily see The Girl with the Needle getting in there as well. And as I said, like How to Make Millions Before Grandma Dies, Flow, there are some trendy titles. I think any of those 8 getting in would not surprise me, but I'm just going to put those 5 above the rest for now. Animated feature, I'm literally going to spend less than 30 seconds on it. There is nothing else cracking this top 5. I would be shocked if anything got in over Wild Robot, Flow, Wallace and Gromit, Inside Out 2, or Memoir of a Snail. Next, that's it. Done. Moving on. Let's move on to some of these tech awards because this is where I think things get a little bit dicey. Let's start with the original song though, because I think original song is clear at the top. I think the two Emilia Perez songs are very safe. They've been getting in everywhere. The Diane Warren stat, she has now been nominated like 8 years in a row. If she misses, this would be shocking at this point. I think she's going to keep getting nominated until she either wins or dies. Like, I really think that's going to be Diane Warren's legacy with the Oscars. I hope she wins eventually some year. I've been saying, and I said this in the Discord today too, like, she needs to just compose a song for a Best Picture nominee. Because once she does that, like if Christopher Nolan asked her to do a credit song, like that's going to be what gets her the win. She's not going to get the win writing a song for, a Tyler Perry Christmas Netflix drop. That's just not going to happen. Or what was the last one? The Flamin' Hot Cheeto movie from last year. So I think if she really sincerely wants a win in this category, she's just got to pick higher profile films because her songs are fine. But I think they just love her. And I think if they love her and they love the movie, they'll finally give her a win. But regardless, she's getting nominated, so I don't think we have to worry about it. Kiss the Sky, this feels so apt for a snub. I'm telling you right now, I feel in my bones that this is going to get snubbed just because it just feels like that sweet kids movie song that just the Academy just doesn't take seriously enough. I mean, look at what was it, Ciao Papa from Pinocchio a few years ago. I did not like that song, so I'm glad it got snubbed. But I feel like sometimes if we see a major snub, it comes from either the animated movie or the more lighthearted song that is very sweet and simple. That isn't doing anything necessarily revolutionary with its music. So I would definitely watch out for that. But right now, it hasn't missed anything to make me think that it's, there's a stronger option there. As for the fifth slot, there's just a few ways I want to approach it. One, they could just go with challengers because they're probably going to nominate and score. They love Atticus Ross. They love Trent Reznor. They could just be like, hey, two challengers noms. Here we go. Score song. There we go. They could put Like a Bird in there because they also have a tendency to put a surprise Best Picture nominee in there. Like Wajaje got in for Killers of the Flower Moon. The David Byrne song from Everything Everywhere All at Once got in as a surprise. So there could be a surprise there from Sing Sing. The only thing is like Sing Sing is not a major Best Picture contender right now. Right now, I think it's just competing for a spot in Best Picture. So it's not like Killers of the Flower Moon or Everything Everywhere where they were these big Best Picture contenders at the time of the nominees. So that's why I'm not necessarily jumping on Like a Bird. So the other two in question here are the Elton John song and the Kristen Wiig song. They have a tend to go for documentary songs written by celebrities. Now, I really think there's legitimately a chance either of those could get in as that fifth slot. I think Will and Harper is probably the cooler nomination, but I do think Elton John, he's the name. They all love him. They love Kristen Wiig too, but the music branch doesn't know Kristen Wiig. Like, she's not a name amongst the music branch that might be nominating. Obviously, everyone knows who Kristen Wiig is, but like when you're looking at Elton John, they're just going to see Elton John, and even if they haven't heard all these songs, they're going to be like, "Oh, Elton John next." Why is this lit up? Oh my god, it's a flashlight. I had no idea this pen was also a flashlight. They're going to see Elton John and they're going to be like, "Go, check, next." And I think Elton John could make it in just on his name alone. I mean, he's a previous 2-time, 3-time winner. He won for Lion King. He won for Rocket Man. So I feel good that if a documentary song written by an artist about an artist in a documentary is the trend we seem to see time after time, I think Elton John gets in. So moving on to best score, The Brutalist, Emilia Perez, Conclave, Wild Robot, they've kind of gotten in everywhere. I know there's also that fear that Wild Robot could miss here because it is animated and sometimes animated scores have a tough time. But I think about Encanto. Encanto was not predicted and it made it in. Pinocchio was predicted and it missed. So animated films, it really is hit or miss. So I'm going to say it's a hit here. It's my personal favorite score of the year so far. So from what I've seen. So Wild Robot, I think, is going to be more of the Encanto than it is the Pinocchio or the Spider-Verse, even though I also thought Spider-Verse definitely should have made it in and it didn't. Okay, looking at this last spot, what am I saying? I'm thinking of Alexander Desplat because I'm thinking of music. Okay, Nosferatu has been getting some surprise nominations. It got the BAFTA, I believe. So that was a cool nomination that puts it in the contention. Wicked, it's not an original score, it's an adapted score, but it's still shortlisted here. So there's a chance it gets in if the music branch is like very pro Wicked. But also the fact that Wicked doesn't have an original song, maybe the music branch isn't as, noticing the Wicked hype as some other branches might. The one you really have to watch out for, though, is Alberto Iglesias for The Room Next Door. He gets in even if his movies don't get anything else. Like, he will always get a one-off score nomination here or there. I just don't think there's any passion whatsoever for The Room Next Door right now. But if there is a surprise to happen, it's him. But ultimately, what I'm going to go with for the fifth slot is challengers. I think Trent Reznor, Atticus Ross, they are the safest bet right now to get that nomination. They are Oscar darlings. Challengers is still a very popular film, even though it's not been very popular with awards bodies. It is still also very highly nominated, even if the film isn't nominated in a lot of other places. This is going to be where I think they are able to award challengers. I think winning the Globe really, really helped it here. Also, the fact that it has a chance in best editing. I think the editing with the music makes a lot of sense. So, I think Challengers is going to get in, but I think a lot of people putting Challengers in their top 2 or 3, it's a little overzealous. I think they need to kind of taper their expectations a little bit, because there is a very likely world where Challengers just gets goose egged on the day. But right now, I think the Reznor and Ross effect is going to keep them in. Let's move on to Best Sound, though. And this is a very interesting category because normally I would say the big musical of the year, the big musical biopic of the year gets into sound. But the thing is, this year we have 3. We have a musical biopic with Complete Unknown. We have 2 musicals with Wicked and with Amelia Perez. And the thing is, BAFTA only put one in. BAFTA put in Wicked. BAFTA did not put in A Complete Unknown, did not put in Amelia Perez. But I think the Oscars are not very, selective when it comes to their musicals and music films. I honestly think they're all going to get in because they're all very sound focused. I don't think Amelia Perez has good sound, but I think they're just going to say, you know what? It's a musical. Of course it had great sound because it's music, without actually thinking about what the music actually is doing and how it's balanced and how it's mixed. I think Wicked makes a lot of sense. It's obviously gotten in everywhere. It got a Critics' Choice, BAFTA, it got the Cinema Audio Society. There's actually 3 films that got all 3 of those. Gladiator and Dune are the other 2. So that should be your easy 5 right there. The 3 musicals plus Dune and Gladiator, which got all 3 of the precursors it needed. I mean, looking at some of the other ones on the bubble, Alien Romulus hasn't really gotten anything, but a lot of people are saying because it just showed up on a lot of shortlists that it's going to be the creator. Here's 2 things you have to keep in mind, and I think the Oscar expert and Brother Bro on their video made a really good point about this. We can't just look at last year's Oscars and just assume everything's going to happen the same. Everyone's saying, oh, it's going to be Nyad 2.0. Pamela Anderson and Jamie Lee Curtis, they're Nyad 2.0. Or, Alien Romulus is going to be the creator 2.0. The thing is, we do have trends that we see happening time and time and time again, like Diane Warren, for example, a trend we should pay attention to. But something like Alien Romulus showing up on a bunch of shortlists, it shows that it's very well liked amongst the Academy, which is a good thing. But getting on a shortlist for each branch is impressive, but it doesn't necessarily mean that there's this group think of like, yep, we're nominating it for everything. I think getting on every shortlist just shows that you're strong in every branch, but I don't think that means you're guaranteed for a nomination. And the fact of the matter is, Alien Romulus has been getting a lot of shortlists, but it hasn't been getting on in a lot of places for sound or for visual effects. So I think a lot of people are jumping to seeing Alien Romulus on so many different shortlists and just saying, okay, it's on. And I just don't necessarily know if people should jump the gun so fast on that. So that is the point I'm trying to make there. I don't think it's the creator 2.0. And in fact, I am going to even put it below Blitz because Blitz got the one-off BAFTA nomination. I've been saying for a long time that Blitz feels like it could just get a random tech or 2. And I think this is where it could get it, this and probably production design. But right now, I just don't think any Blitz momentum, is none. There's just no Blitz momentum. So right now, I can't predict it. Deadpool and Wolverine got Cinema Audio Society. A Complete Unknown missed BAFTA, but that was just baffling to me. I think A Complete Unknown is in. Amelia Perez doesn't really have any precursors, but just looking at all the other ones on the list, like Wild Robot's not going to get in, Joker's not going to get in. So just looking at the short list, I think that makes the most sense. The 3 musicals plus Dune plus Gladiator, I think that's where I'm going to go with sound. So now moving on to visual effects, I think, again, there's kind of 3 locks here. There's 3 things that have gotten in everywhere. Critics' Choice, BAFTA, Visual Effects Society, and that is Dune, that is Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, and that is Better Man, which I'm so excited about because I love all 3 of those films a lot. I gave them all 4 stars on Letterboxd. That's a very high score for me, so I'm very happy. So looking at the other, kind of nominees on the bubble, Wicked, a lot of people are predicting, and I'm going to tell you why I don't think Wicked is going to happen. BAFTA went for Wicked, and BAFTA's percentage of accuracy is 73%. So it's not anything to scoff at. It's not anything to ignore. But when looking at what BAFTA tends to nominate, they always usually go for at least one nominee in the Best Picture territory. And I know Wicked didn't get Best Picture at BAFTA, but Wicked is at least in the conversation for Best Picture at the Oscars. And other films that follow the same trajectory. Look at Black Panther in 2018. Look at Poor Things last year. These films that everyone thought, oh, they're getting in Best Picture, so they're just going to get a visual effects nomination. I don't think just because you're going to be in Best Picture means you're going to get in visual effects if you're shortlisted. And I think we've seen that with Poor Things, with Black Panther. So that's why I'm not predicting Wicked. I think the monkeys are cool. This is a big year for monkeys. Planet of the Apes has monkeys. Better Man has monkeys. Gladiator has monkeys. Mufasa has monkeys. But I also think like the monkeys is the selling point of the visual effects. I think all the other stuff that, you know, people love about Wicked and the craft of it all is in the production design, the costume design, less so the effects. I actually think the green screen is some of the biggest criticisms I've been seeing of the film, and some of the lighting, which I think can aid in some of the visual effects looking good or bad. So I'm not necessarily going to jump on predicting it, though. If it does make it in, I won't be super surprised. What I do think could make it on, I mean, Gladiator 2, Napoleon last year, another Ridley Scott film, kind of followed in this trajectory of missing some key precursors, but still getting in. I think Gladiator 2 could very well just do that again, what Napoleon did. And I think the visual effects are better and more obvious in Gladiator 2 than they are in Napoleon. So I think that's a good sign. Alien, again, people are saying it's the creator because it got on a lot of short lists, it got BAFTA long lists, but it hasn't gotten the nomination for the precursors that people need. So this is, I think, the hill I'm going to die on this year, is that I just don't see Alien Romulus getting into these tech categories. But again, I'm probably going to be wrong with some of these. As long as I go 4 out of 5, I'm happy. Ultimately, what the last spot came down to for me was Deadpool and Wolverine and Mufasa. Deadpool and Wolverine, Marvel has a really good track record, getting 7 of the last 9, but the precursors haven't really been there. So I'm going to go with Mufasa. It got the Visual Effects Society nomination. It hasn't been getting nominated everywhere, but I also think, you know, the first one was a big, heavy contender for visual effects. This one is supposedly much better than the original. I can't remember the original. I've kind of obscured it from my brain, so all I can remember is Mufasa, and the visuals were pretty damn good in that. Also, Barry Jenkins is attached, so he's got a little bit of an Oscar pull to his name, even though he's not the one doing the visual effects. I also think in terms of the visual effects branch, they sometimes just go for what they see more of. And honestly, a lot of Wicked, yes, there's a lot of visual effects going on, but a lot of people are praising the practical sets. A lot of people are praising the practical sets in Gladiator. No one's praising the practical effects in Mufasa because there really are none. So the fact that there is so much visual effects makes me feel confident that it'll get that 5th slot. So right there, I have Dune Part 2, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, Better Man, Gladiator 2, and Mufasa, the Lion King. Moving on to makeup, I think this one is very difficult because there are 6 contenders. I think probably 7 if you want to count Dune Part 2. Even though Dune Part 2 has been missing some big precursors, it missed the makeup guild altogether, which was quite shocking. I think this is just sequelitis. I think the fact that the first Dune got some attention and some text, I feel like they're not as eager to go for the second Dune. So what the contenders actually are: Wicked, I think, is safe. I think The Substance is safe. I think Nosferatu are safe. I think all those top 3 are safe. They all made the makeup and hairstyling guilds. They all made Critics' Choice. They all made BAFTA. I do think A Different Man is still okay, even though it missed BAFTA. I just feel like the actor transformation is really in its favor. And then you have Beetlejuice, which got a bunch of makeup guild nominations but missed BAFTA, missed a long list. And then you have Emilia Perez, which was nominated for BAFTA. It was nominated at the Makeup Guild, and it is a frontrunner for Best Picture. And honestly, while Emilia Perez seems like the least engaging choice. I mean, Emilia Perez, it's really for that 8 minutes in the beginning with Carla Sofia Gascon's character pre-transition. That's kind of where the nomination would come from. But honestly, like looking at it, like it makes sense that Emilia Perez would be in, but I'm just trying to think about what would be taken out. And right now, I think the most vulnerable are A Different Man and Beetlejuice, because those top 3 got into everything it needed to. I think A Different Man missing the BAFTA long list is just something that I can't really ignore. It's the thing that's kind of lingering with me and making me think, you know what, maybe it's just going to miss at the end of the day, especially also because that's another movie where the makeup is significant, but it's also very early on in the film. And, you know, I think kind of toward the halfway point, the makeup doesn't become the focus anymore. If you know, you know, I don't want to spoil what happens in the movie, but I really just think Beetlejuice is in because Beetlejuice is just such a whimsical thing. It feels like an Oscars thing, even though it's not anywhere near a Best Picture nomination. I feel like the Oscars, the makeup branch especially, always goes for something very out there, whimsical. They love their quantity over quality for some of these. And Beetlejuice has quality, but there's just so much quantity that I feel like it's going to get in. So really, like looking at this, I think think it's between A Different Man and Emilia Perez. I think for the sake of the makeup branch always kind of doing the right thing, like I always feel like they've got really cool nominations, and this would be the only chance, pretty much, spoiler because I don't have Sebastian Stan in, this would be like the only chance to nominate A Different Man. I think the makeup branch is going to be cool, so I'll keep A Different Man in, but I am very, very much predicting that Emilia Perez could squeak in. The problem is also sometimes you just got to go with the safe 5 because you don't know what to take out, and in this case I think the safe 5 is the 5 I have in. I think Emilia Perez could spoil, but I don't know yet which of those 5 is the most vulnerable. Right now I would say A Different Man, but just something about it is just not clicking with me that it could be the snub. So I think it's sometimes better to just settle for 4 out of 5, even if you think Emilia Perez is getting in. Because if I take out the wrong thing, then I could be extra wrong if Emilia Perez doesn't get in. So I'm going to leave it with that. I know I didn't really help y'all out any more than I helped myself out, but here we go. Let's move on to costumes. Looking at what got into the Costume Guild, looking at what got into Critics' Choice and BAFTA, I think Wicked, Nosferatu, and Conclave should all be pretty safe. If you had told me Conclave was a top 3 contender in this category early in the year, hell, if you had even told me Nosferatu was, I probably would have, kind of batted an eye or put up an eyebrow at you. But truth of the matter is, it's gotten in everywhere it needs to. I think in terms of what else is on the table, I think Gladiator and Dune make the next most sense. They both have the Costume Guild, they have Critics' Choice. The only thing is that they did miss BAFTA, and BAFTA does have an 80% crossover. But looking at what did make BAFTA, Blitz and A Complete Unknown, they are the only nominations it got were at BAFTA. The only nominations those movies got were at BAFTA. And looking at the solo BAFTA stat, while BAFTA is 80% crossover in general, out of the solo BAFTA nominations, meaning the films that were only nominated at BAFTA, like A Complete Unknown, like Blitz, they've only gone 2 for 8. So, for them to go 4 for 10 or 2 or 3 for 10, I just don't see that happening. So, yes, there's a chance A Complete Unknown or Blitz could get in because they got into BAFTA and BAFTA has a good track record. But because they only got BAFTA, I'm just not as confident, especially considering that Dune and Gladiator 2 both got Critics' Choice and Costume Guilds. Maria also got Critics' Choice and Costume Guilds, but I just think Maria is so far from Best Picture. Even Gladiator 2, which is definitely not in Best Picture, I feel like it at least is going to get a bunch of other nominations, whereas Maria, there's really only one other category I could see it getting into right now because I don't think Angelina Jolie's making it in. So I think right now I would lean Dune and Gladiator 2 over Maria, and then definitely over A Complete Unknown and Blitz just because of the BAFTA stats. So I'm definitely going to go with those 2. Next, moving on to production design, there are 5 films that got BAFTA, Critics' Choice, and the Art Directors Guild, and that is Wicked, Dune, Brutalist, Conclave, and Nosferatu. So that should be the 5, but looking at those 5, the only thing that gives me a little concern is Conclave, and the reason is the only 2 films that are not fantasy films or period pieces that got in this modern era of extended nominees since 2009 are The Father and Parasite. And looking at that, I mean, that makes me a little nervous because Conclave is not a period piece and it is not a fantasy film, which makes me a little nervous. Obviously, they did construct the Vatican, which kind of is the story behind Conclave, like the story behind the nomination. Like a lot of people are excited. They're like, wow, they recreated the Vatican for this movie. But honestly, I think if you didn't know that, and you're just watching the movie, I don't know if it's very obvious that it's not just the Vatican that they're using to film it in. Obviously, there's a scene that happens toward the end where they have to destruct some of the set. So, I mean, it might be a little bit more obvious. But to see, I mean, The Father was nominated in a COVID year. Parasite, not nominated in a COVID year, but it was the Best Picture eventually. And if Conclave goes on to win Best Picture, then like we should have gone in retrospect and seen and been like, okay, it's getting in production design. So I think if it gets into production design, it helps its case for picture even more. But right now, just looking next to the competition, I mean, Wicked is a fantasy film. Dune, sci-fi fantasy, Brutalist, period piece, Nosferatu, period piece / fantasy. So Conclave just feels like the outlier there, and I just feel like the other competition are just a little bit more intriguing. I mean, A Complete Unknown, probably not going to happen, even though there's been a little bit of hype that it could get in. I think Gladiator 2, though, is the most intriguing prospect here. Yes, I think Gladiator 2 is going to miss some above-the-line stuff. I don't think it's going to be as big a contender, but this is also a contender that Napoleon got. This is also a category that Napoleon got into just last year. So I think the fact that Napoleon, again, we can't necessarily look at the very last Oscars as an indicator, but just looking at the type of film it is. I mean, Napoleon, Ridley Scott, big, epic, costume period piece. I think that's what Gladiator 2 is as well. So I just think it just fits the bill for a more likely production design category than Conclave. I mean, they're both kind of doing the same thing. Conclave is reconstructing the Vatican. Gladiator 2 is quite literally reconstructing the Colosseum. So it's really just a matter of which one is more of a genre film. And I think Gladiator 2 is. So while Conclave got all the production design precursors it needed, this is one case where I'm going to go with the logic of the trend more so than the stat. So I'm going to go Gladiator 2 in that fifth spot. It might, I keep saying spot, I don't know why, but it might come back to bite me, but we'll see. Moving on now to editing, and whoo boy, editing is tough. Let's just talk about the elephant in the room, and that is September 5. A lot of people are predicting September 5, and honestly, I tried to look through all the stats, because September 5 hasn't been popping up in the places you want it to. It popped up at Critics' Choice, but it didn't get an ACE nomination. It didn't get a BAFTA nomination. So why are we nominating September 5? Well, there's two reasons. One, it showed up in PGA, which means it's a strong contender for a Best Picture nomination, and they tend to just go for the films that are more Best Picture forward. Also, I'm looking at one stat, and it's a very obscure stat, but Uncut Gems is the only film ever to be nominated for Critics' Choice and the Andy Spirit Awards for Best Editing and then miss the Oscar. So September 5, that's the stat I'm looking at, because September 5 is in a spot where it would either become the second film only to miss after getting Critics' Choice and Spirit Awards, or it'll just get in, because that's what happens when you get a Spirit Awards and a Critics' Choice nomination. So that was a really interesting stat that honestly kind of sold me on the September 5 idea, because so many people are saying, well, it's getting into editing now. And I'm like, where are you getting this from? But now looking at that stat, I'm a little bit more convinced. Also because I'm looking at all the other things that probably could get in. I mean, The Brutalist is something that like I always thought was a contender, but after time, I mean, it missed BAFTA, it missed some really crucial things to where I'm like, you know what? It's that length of the movie. They just never nominate long movies. I mean, look at Killers of the Flower Moon, didn't get in here either. So I feel like if you are the longest movie of the slate, I know people are going to be screaming Oppenheimer at their screens right now, but the truth of the matter is Killers of the Flower Moon was way longer than Oppenheimer in the same year. When you are the longest film of the slate, they tend to look at you as like this big thing that could have been edited down, and that's a strike against you for editing. That's why I don't even have Brutalist here. I am considering Substance, because I always have been saying if Substance could just get editing, then I still think its Best Picture chances are alive. But just looking at all the other contenders that have kind of sprouted up, I mean, Dune, Anora, Conclave, they got BAFTA, they got Critics' Choice, they got Eddie, they should be safe. Amelia Perez has gotten Ace, Eddie, and BAFTA, which is a pretty good stat. You want to have both of those. I mean, 8 out of 11 films that have gotten both of those have gotten in. So I think Amelia Perez, the stats are on her side. And then you have a Complete Unknown and Challengers kind of duking it out as well. I mean, Challengers kind of fits the mold of a traditional editing nominee. Sports films do really well here, especially big showy ones like Challengers. It also got Critics' Choice. It got ACE, which is a good combo. But then you have a Complete Unknown, which is a really strong on the rise Best Picture contender. It's been getting momentum at the right time. But ultimately, I just keep looking at September 5 and I see everyone predicting it. And I don't want to be the idiot who said, September 5 isn't getting in. I'm putting in Challengers, and then Challengers doesn't get in and September 5 does. And I think ultimately it could just come down to which is more likely for Best Picture. I don't think either of them are going to get into Best Picture at the end of the day, but I think September 5 is closer than Challengers is. So really that's all it comes down to. And it really hurts because I would love to put the Substance in here. I would love to have the Brutalist in here, but this is a really stacked category. And I do think there is room for a surprise, maybe Conclave, maybe even Anora. Maybe even Dune, if they are just not looking at Dune as like a really top contender for Best Picture. But this category has me very confused. But I think I'm going to go September 5, even though it hasn't gotten all the precursors it needed. I think Challengers is the one with the precursors that I have the most faith in, and I just think September 5 is a little bit stronger across the board in terms of the Academy than Challengers is. So ultimately, that is my rationale. As we move on to cinematography, which, again, another crop of films that have gotten everything they needed. Brutalist, Dune, Conclave, Nosferatu, those have gotten everything. Critics' Choice, BAFTA, and in the ASC, which is the American Society of Cinematographers. A big snub for ASC was Nickel Boys. Nickel Boys is the one that when I saw that Nickel Boys didn't just get snubbed from ASC, but ASC extended from 5 nominees to 7 and still snubbed Nickel Boys. The fact that Nickel Boys couldn't get even into a field of 7 shows that it's not going to get nominated here. And it's one of those things that I just can't wrap my head around because Nickel Boys feels like the most cinematography forward film of the year. So that's just going to be a huge snub, even though we were already kind of prepared for it. What's going to take that spot, though? That's the question. I mean, Girl with the Needle is Black and White, and I think Black and White is always something to keep an eye on. A Complete Unknown got the ASC nomination, but it only got an ASC nomination. It hasn't gotten anything else. And then Maria, which I think is probably the most likely right now. I mean, it is a random pick, but we've seen some random picks over the years. We saw Bardo get in. We saw Empire of Light get in, these kind of random one-offs. Even last year, El Conde got in, which is actually the same cinematographer, same director. So it's Ed Lockman working with Pablo Larraín. So the fact that it got an ASC nomination with Ed Lockman attached, and it also kind of fulfills the Black and White thing because half of it is in black and white in those flashback sequences. I think that's going to kind of be where I lean here. There's always kind of a lone cinematography nomination that doesn't really translate anywhere else. This is actually the only nomination I'm predicting for Maria. So I think if it's going to get something, cinematography is the best bet here. But now we get into some of the fun ones. I mean, these have all been fun ones, but these are the big guys. These are adapted and original screenplay. Let's start with original because I think it's actually a little easier to predict. I mean, again, the top 3 or 4 for all these are very, very safe. I mean, Anora, A Real Pain, Brutalist, Substance, none of these have missed. They all got Critics' Choice, they all got BAFTA, they all got Golden Globes. So you can't look at WGA for this one because WGA has so many ineligibilities. So I'm not going to necessarily take much account into that. But looking now, it really seems to be a battle between challengers and September 5. I mean, I think a lot of people are going to say, oh, We Imagine His Light is still alive, but the fact that it missed BAFTA, I just don't see it happening. I really think it's going to become challengers versus September 5. Now, the question is, which one is closer to Best Picture? Because ultimately, of the last 20 nominations, 18 of them were Best Picture nominees. So sometimes you just got to go with the more obvious choice. And I think, like we just talked about with editing, I think September 5 is just a more likely Best Picture choice than Challengers. So ultimately, I'm going to go September 5 over Challengers. But this is easily one of those categories that I could say, change it last minute, flip flop. I think this should just be your own gut, your own passion, because I think it's ultimately going to be one of those two. And I wouldn't think it would be a crazy snub if Challengers gets in and September 5 misses. Also, I haven't seen September 5 yet. I've been meaning to watch it. So maybe when I watch it, I'll be like, yeah, no brainer that's getting in for screenplay. But right now, I feel like that seems to be the safe 5 right now. Because also moving on to adapted screenplay, we've been searching for months and months. Every time I do these predictions, I keep saying there's a lone screenplay nominee. There's always a lone screenplay nominee. And I've been wondering who's going to be the lone screenplay nominee. And I'm kind of like, oh, is it going to be Challengers? And then I take it out of score, or is it going to be September 5? And then I take it out of editing. But looking at it really, I mean, I think Challengers is not that lone screenplay. It's not September 5. It's Nickel Boys, because Nickel Boys, we predicted it to miss cinematography. And I'll tell you right now, I don't have it getting director, I don't have it getting supporting actress, and I don't have it in picture, which means Nickel Boys will probably be this year's lone screenplay nominee. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I think Nickel Boys is a great screenplay. It's a little sad because I think Nickel Boys should be considered in more categories, but the truth of the matter is there's always one lone screenplay nominee, and the fact that September 5 is looking strong in editing and Challengers is looking strong in score, this made it a very easy kind of thing to narrow down. Because Sing Sing can't be that because it's getting an acting nomination. A Complete Unknown's getting a bunch of nominations. Dune is getting some nominations. Amelia Perez is getting nominations. Conclave's getting nominations. I mean, Nickel Boys feels like it's going to be that sole screenplay nominee. But the plus for Nickel Boys is it's gotten in everywhere it needs to, pretty much. I mean, it's gotten a lot of precursors. So the fact of the matter is, I think Nickel Boys is a very likely nominee here, and I think it just fulfills that slot of that lone screenplay nomination that we see time and time again. That is a trend we still have to keep our eyes on. But if we're looking at what could potentially be a spoiler here, because I think that top 5 is all pretty safe. I mean, it's kind of been the 5 that's been kind of getting in pretty much everywhere. The only thing that leaves me a little bit of pause is A Complete Unknown, because A Complete Unknown only got BAFTA, and only 11 films since 2015 have gotten only BAFTA, and only 4 of those actually went on to get the Oscar. So A Complete Unknown is one of only 11 films to get only BAFTA, and it would be the 5th time it would get into Oscar. But honestly, I feel like A Complete Unknown is just peaking at the right time. I think A Complete Unknown, if it had been a little bit earlier of a release, I think we would have seen it get into a few more places. So I'm not necessarily going to hold too much stock in that stat just because A Complete Unknown is surging at the right time, especially with this one extra week. I feel like that is a film that largely benefited from having an extra week to campaign. But if you're looking for a spoiler here, I think it's definitely going to be either Dune or Wicked. I think because these are the big populist films, and sometimes we see the populist films sneak in here. I mean, look at Top Gun a few years ago got in. So I think there is likelihood that Dune could be the one that sneaks in here. If for some reason Nickel Boys gets 0 nominations on the day and we see no lone screenplay stat and we see Dune get in, we could also see Sing Sing miss here. It would be devastating, but I think Sing Sing, the thing with Sing Sing is that I feel like if it's getting into picture, it'll at least get screenplay and an acting nomination at the very least. And right now, spoiler alert, I'm leaning towards having it in picture. So if I have it in picture, I got to predict it in a few other places. Now, the thing is, if it misses song and screenplay and Clarence Maclin, then you know what? I'm not going to predict it for picture. Obviously, I can't change my predictions, but I'm not going to expect to see it in picture. But the thing is, I think if it gets into picture, I think adapted screenplay comes along for Sing Sing. So that's why I still have it in here. Though I do think a lot of people are sound for dropping Sing Sing out of their predictions. If you're not predicting Sing Sing for Best Picture, then I definitely think it's definitely worth thinking about putting Dune in over Sing Sing, or maybe putting what else? A Wicked in over Sing Sing. But right now, because I have it in picture, I'm going to stick to my guns and keep it here in screenplay. So moving on now to some acting nominations. Supporting actor, we kind of just talked about it. I think the big question here is now, is Clarence Maclin in or is he out? Because for a while I had him out and I was shocked by it. I was sad about it. But then seeing him get in at BAFTA showed that he had a lot of strength. I've been saying since his Gotham win that he has the momentum if he keeps making these speeches to win this category. Now I don't think he's going to win. I think Kieran Culkin's sweeping. I think the whole thing is that like we want to just see him get a nomination. I think this is going to be one that I'm holding my breath for as they're announcing all the nominees, especially because he would be one of the last ones to be called. It would start with Borisov and then go with Culkin. So I'm really hoping to hear Clarence Maclin's name called, because also thinking about it, like I just said with the screenplay, if Sing Sing gets Best Picture, I think there's a very good likelihood it comes along the ride. The supporting actor nomination and the screenplay nomination come along for the ride. So I'm kind of banking on that. It's kind of like a puzzle. Like, okay, if this does get in Best Picture, I have him in. If he doesn't get into Best Picture, then I would swap him out for something like Jeremy Strong. Jeremy Strong, I just saw The Apprentice the other day. Watched it on Monday, of course, because reasons. I kind of wanted to wallow a little bit, but I think Jeremy Strong's great. I think also being the Succession boy alongside Kieran Culkin would be a really cool story. The only thing is, like, I just don't see a world where like Jeremy Strong is the only nomination for The Apprentice. It just feels weird that like the movie The Apprentice and it's not Sebastian Stan as the representative of that film. I just also don't think Americans are as into The Apprentice as the international voting bodies are. It's a lot easier for the international voting bodies to enjoy that film and not think about it in such a meta way. And I think the fact of the matter is that in these more, localized groups, we're not seeing The Apprentice pop up here and there, but we are seeing it at something like BAFTA. And while Jeremy Strong did also get SAG, I just don't know. I think he's the most likely to get snubbed here. I still think a lot of people are predicting him, and they should be, especially because I still think his precursors show he's stronger than Maclin in this case. But I just think Clarence Maclin, if there's passion there for Sing Sing, which I hope there is, I think there will be, I think Maclin comes along for the ride. And then I'm not even going to talk about the other four because I think they're the locks. I mean, Guy Pearce missed at SAG, but that was the only one he missed. Everyone else has gotten in everywhere else. The only person to miss after missing SAG, but also getting BAFTA Critics' Choice and Golden Globes is Timothée Chalamet for Beautiful Boy. So Guy Pearce has only one movie that he would be comparable to if he missed. So that makes me confident enough to predict him. And then, of course, Yura Borisov, the surprise of the season, has been getting nominated for everything. He was someone that when I saw the movie, I was like, this would be a really sneaky surprise Oscar nomination, but it's not a surprise anymore. Actually, I think he's the second most likely. Edward Norton's getting in, especially riding off of that Complete Unknown high. Kieran Culkin sweeping, which is also going to be something we're going to need to talk about a little bit later when we get to Best Picture. But you know what? I'm going to save supporting actress because supporting actress I'm still not ready to commit to. Let's go actor because I think actor is also a little easy. It's really just figuring out the last spot because I think Adrian Brody's locked. I think Chalamet's locked. I think Domingo's locked. I think Fiennes is locked. If any of those four miss, I would be genuinely shocked. So I'm just going to say they all make it in, and the last slot is between Daniel Craig and Hugh Grant. I know a lot of people are saying Sebastian Stan, but the truth of the matter is he's going to split votes. It's just natural. He's not going to get everyone to go behind one of those two movies. He's going to get people in both camps. And I think that can be really nice if you're shortlisted in one of them, like he was at BAFTA. He wasn't shortlisted for Different Man, so everyone could go for The Apprentice. But here, there's no shortlist, so they don't know whether or not to vote for The Apprentice or Different Man. So I think he's going to split. Even though he won the Golden Globe, I don't see it happening for him. I really see this between Daniel Craig and Hugh Grant. They both have one glaring stat for them, and that is that Daniel Craig has gotten SAG, Golden Globes, and Critics' Choice. The only person in this expanded lineup phase to miss after getting SAG, Golden Globes, and Critics' Choice and missing BAFTA is James Franco for The Disaster Artist. And then for Hugh Grant, who got BAFTA, Golden Globes, and Critics' Choice, nobody has ever missed with that combo. So either we're going to get the second person ever to miss by missing only BAFTA with Daniel Craig missing, or we're going to get the only person ever to miss after getting everything but SAG with Hugh Grant. Now, the question is, if James Franco didn't get canceled, would he have gotten in? And I do think he would have. So let's pretend James Franco isn't James Franco. Let's say he's another actor, gives the same performance, has no backlash against him as a person. Let's say he gets in. Then Craig and Hugh Grant are basically at the same stat, meaning nobody has ever gotten 3 out of the 4 and missed, having only missed BAFTA or only missed SAG. So then I look at the two, BAFTA and SAG. Which is more important to get for an acting nomination? And ultimately, I think it's more important to have the SAG nomination than to not have the SAG nomination, which is why ultimately I'm going to put Daniel Craig in over Hugh Grant. But really, I mean, that is a cool stat. The fact that Hugh Grant would be the first person ever to get BAFTA, Golden Globes, and Critics' Choice, miss SAG, and then miss the Oscar. No actor has ever done it in this expanded lineup phase. Daniel Craig would now be the second person if he were to miss, next to James Franco if he missed to miss BAFTA only. So either way, there's going to be a lot of stat breaking, or they both get in and we're going to see a huge surprise and we're all just going to be in for a hell of a chaotic ride. But ultimately, I'm going with Daniel Craig because SAG matters. SAG is the biggest branch, especially when it comes to acting. So I think I'm going to lean SAG also because what is the likelihood that they're going to nominate 2 horror performances this year with Demi Moore and Hugh Grant? I think it's very unlikely. So there we go. I'm going to skip actress again because I want to come back to actress and supporting actress again because they are giving me so much agony and anxiety. So I'm going to go to director next because I think director is actually a little straightforward. I think, Brady Corbett, Jock Odiard, Sean Baker, and Edward Berger have been getting him pretty much everywhere. I think Edward Berger is the most likely to miss if one of these 4 misses. I think Odiard, a lot of people are predicting him to be the surprise miss. It's not going to be. I mean, the European Film Awards gave him the prize, and the person who wins the European Film Awards almost always gets in here. So I wouldn't be predicting an Odiard Hope Diction snub, even though I know a lot of people are hoping that happens. James Mangold, a lot of people are now predicting him because he got the DGA, but DGA usually only goes 4 for 5. So if we're looking at 4 for 5, that's your 4. It's Corbet, Odiard, Baker, Berger. The question is who's going to be that 5th slot. And I think they tend to go more international, which is why I think it's going to be between Kapadia and Farge. I do think the substance, missing editing and missing some text is going to be tough. But ultimately, I do think just the substance in general has a little bit more passion than All We Imagine Is Light. But the thing is, the director's branch always throws us for a loop, so I would not be surprised if Kapadia gets in. I wouldn't even be surprised if Villeneuve ends up getting in after all. But the truth is, Villeneuve missed DGA, and I think that was like the final nail in the coffin. I feel like DGA is the place where they would award like the director of the big blockbuster populist pick. I mean, that's where they nominated Joseph Kosinski for Top Gun Maverick. So the fact that Denis couldn't even get into DGA makes me think he's just not in contention this year. And it's really sad because I think his direction in Dune Part 2 is better than his direction in Dune Part 1. I still like Dune Part 1 better than Part 2, but his direction is totally a step up. I mean, I think the technicals are a step up. It's just, I think the screenplay and the editing is a little sloppier in the second one than the first one. It's a little less coherent. So yeah, I just think it would be a crazy snub, but it would be honestly, sadly, not much of a snub at this point because I think everyone's predicting him to miss. So I'm going to go Corley Farja. It would also be cool to get a woman in there. Either way, but Payal Kapadia gets into, we're also getting a woman in the category, which is super cool. I always love women in the directing categories. So I'm going to go with Farja, even though I also think there could be a world where both women get in and Berger misses. I would not be shocked by that either. I did kind of give up on Mohammed Rasoulof getting in for Seed of the Sacred Fig. That was a hope diction. I'm finally able to put that to rest. But now we got to go to supporting actors. We got to do it. I just got to bite the bullet here. I have no idea what to do for this. I have 9 contenders. Technically 10 if you want to add Ingenue Ellis to the mix, but I think right now, just for the sake of making it easier, I'll just leave Ingenue Ellis off, which is sad, but I just think if Nickel Boys is only getting 1 nomination for screenplay, I'm going to stand by that. Looking at who has gotten everything. Saldana, Ariana Grande Botera. Boom, done, they're in, cool. The next question is, who are the next 3? And looking, I think the next most likely after the 2 of them is Isabella Rossellini, which is shocking to me because I didn't think she gave one of the 5 best supporting performances, but it is still a supporting performance. It is very clearly a supporting, not a co-lead, not a second build. She is a supporting performance through and through, which I think is really cool. But the only thing she missed was SAG. So I think, having the BAFTA, Critics' Choice, and Golden Globes, only 2 people have ever gotten all 3 of those and missed. So I think all the stats are in Isabella Rossellini's favor, which then brings us to the next bunch of competitors. So I'm gonna kind of just eliminate them by like certain stats. Like for example, I think Selena Gomez missing the SAG was crucial. I think that was the branch that she would have competed best with, and the fact that Selena Gomez couldn't even get into SAG shows that she's just not coming along for the ride for Emilia Perez. But the pro is it's Emilia Perez, which is one of the top contenders for Best Picture. So if she gets in, I won't be surprised. Same with like Margaret Qualley. She missed BAFTA, which made me think after missing BAFTA and SAG, I'm like, I just don't think Margaret Qualley is going to get in. But again, if she got in, I wouldn't be surprised just because she is the critics sweeper. She has the most critics awards of anyone, even above Saldana and Grande Batera. So again, Gomez, Qualley, they're at the bottom of my list, but honestly, I wouldn't be super shocked to see them make it in at the end of the day. And then Daniel Deadwyler is the next person I'm going to leave off, only because the piano lesson just has nothing else. I mean, it is really just that lone film kind of floating around the universe where she is the only thing being recognized for, which is a bit shocking considering how well Fences did a few years ago and how well Ma Rainey's Black Bottom did. I mean, Ma Rainey's Black Bottom won a couple of Oscars without even getting a Best Picture nomination. So the fact that the piano lesson is only in contention for one performance is pretty shocking considering the other films in that series have gotten a lot of acclaim and a lot of awards love. But honestly, it was just one of those films that just kind of got overshadowed by a lot of other great stuff. But Daniel Deadwyler, she didn't get in for Till, and I just have a feeling she's going to get snubbed again. I feel like this is not the year for them to just rally around, hey, we missed out on Till, let's nominate her now, because honestly, I don't think they knew much about Till to even realize how much of a snub that was. And I just don't think they're going to do the same here. I feel like a lot of people are going to have a pile of screeners, and the piano lesson is just not going to be the priority because they're going to be wanting to watch Emilia Perez or even The Last Showgirl, which brings us to Jamie Lee Curtis because Jamie Lee Curtis got SAG and BAFTA. And that just seems like such a surefire nomination for me. This could be Nyad 2.0, where it's Jamie Lee Curtis and Pamela Anderson shock us all on Oscar morning, and we should have seen it coming because Nyad. But I also keep thinking about the stuff that everyone's been saying about, you can't just judge based on the last year. And again, like this would be an Afterglow nomination. I think she would be getting the nomination because people like her more than they like the performance. But again, you don't necessarily have to think just about previous years, especially when it's so stacked. Sometimes you just have to think about what performance and which films are getting the momentum. And right now, I just think because Felicity Jones is in The Brutalist, and The Brutalist is a very strong contender, especially for Best Picture, but a lot of other categories. And Monica Barbaro, she only got into SAG, which has me a little nervous because I don't think it's ever happened where you just get SAG and don't get into the Oscars. So honestly, based on stats, I should be snubbing Monica Barbaro. But again, I think this is a little unconventional. I mean, the awards, the nomination voting window was a little bit extended. And guess what's in theaters, doing really well in theaters? Complete Unknown. So I really do think if a Complete Unknown had come out earlier, or if this voting, window had been pushed a little earlier, maybe we don't see her get in. But I think because the movie came out right when voting started happening, she gets that SAG nomination. The voting window was extended a little bit. I think Monica Barbaro is someone who's going to really benefit from that. Now, who else is going to benefit is Jamie Lee Curtis, because not only has Jamie Lee Curtis, been in a movie that is also in theaters, that is also getting a lot of buzz at the right time, but she is also someone who has been very vocal about the fires in Los Angeles, which again could play into the social politicking of it all too, which is not a negative either. It's something that, ultimately voters think about. They think about who they want to give it to, not just what performance, which is why, again, like I just don't know how this is going to shake out. I mean, I'm very confused on what is going to happen here for supporting actress. Ultimately, though, I think I am still going to edge Monica Barbaro in over Jamie Lee Curtis, only because I think her movie's stronger. I think it's peaking at the right time. Honestly, there's a world where I think Felicity Jones could miss because a lot of people supposedly are only watching half The Brutalist and then turning it off on their screeners. Again, these anonymous ballads are not anything to hold gospel to. I think it's something that could show an indication of a trend or some sort of mindset of the Academy, but it is not the end-all, be-all. I think if we only went by anonymous ballads, there'd be a lot of crazy things happening this year, like Juror Number 2 getting into Best Picture. So I'm not going to take all these anonymous ballads too closely to heart. I'm taking them all with a grain of salt. And a lot of people saying, oh, I couldn't make it through The Brutalist, or it's too long, I don't want to watch it. I don't think there's going to be enough people that have just not seen Felicity Jones's performance, especially if they take this seriously, and especially considering The Brutalist is potentially going to be Best Picture, or at least be in the top contention for it, I think most people are going to at least try to power through, whether they like it or not. They're going to at least watch The Brutalist. I think it's only a select few that are choosing to turn it off because it's too long, or because they just didn't want to watch the whole thing, or they got bored. So ultimately, I don't really think it's going to hurt Felicity Jones, but she could miss. Again, there's a world where I see Margaret Qualley still making it in. It's just really, really tough. There's so many contenders. Ultimately, though, I think I'm going to pick the top two. Isabella Rossellini only missed SAG, so I'm putting her in. Monica Barbaro only got SAG, but her movie's peaking at the right time. I think SAG Ensemble for Complete Unknown was really selling for me, that these three performances would all be very strong. Timothée Chalamet, Edward Norton, and Monica Barbaro. And then, you know what? I'm going to put Felicity Jones. I think her movie is just overall stronger, but I'm not going to be surprised if Jamie Lee Curtis is the nominee in the morning. I'm not going to, roll my eyes. I'm going to be like, of course. Because anything and everything makes sense, and anything and everything doesn't. So there we go. That's supporting actress. Let's move on to Best Actress now, because I was going to save this for last. I want to save picture for last, but I wanted to save this as a penultimate one, because this is the one that I think I'm going to get the most criticism for, because I'm going against the stats, basically. And the stats tell me there are 4 actresses who have gotten everything. They've gotten SAG, BAFTA, Critics' Choice, Golden Globe. And those 4 are Demi Moore for The Substance, who I think is a frontrunner to win. Mikey Madison for Honora, who's been a shoo-in from the start. Carla Sofia Giscon, whose movie is right now the frontrunner for Best Picture. And then Cynthia Erivo for Wicked. But I do have a little pause with that last name. And I love Cynthia Erivo. Don't get me wrong. She will be a Pickle Award nominee for my show. I love Cynthia Erivo. So this is not at all me predicting a snub because I don't want to see it, or I don't like Cynthia Erivo, or I don't trust the stats. But there's another stat I have to look at, and it's looking at the people who have missed this award after getting BAFTA, Critics' Choice, SAG, Golden Globe. Those 4 actresses in recent memory are Margot Robbie for Barbie last year, Amy Adams for Arrival, Viola Davis for The Woman King, and Lady Gaga for House of Gucci. And looking at all 4 of those films are studio big blockbuster movies. I mean, maybe not as much. House of Gucci obviously didn't make a lot of money. Woman King didn't make a lot of money, but they are big movies. They are not these small indie darlings. I mean, The Woman King, studio produced. Arrival, I believe, was studio produced. House of Gucci, studio production. Barbie, absolutely a studio production. So they are more fitting of that like populist kind of check, that you would check off the box if you had to check something. Like, that is the populist pick. Looking especially next to like Honora and The Substance, Emilia Perez. Those are all still like kind of smaller independent darlings. Whereas Wicked is this big populist film. And I get it. Like, Ariana Grande Botera, I predicted her to get in. Like, I don't think it's totally ignorable. And I definitely think there's a world where Cynthia Erivo could get in. But that is my one knock against it, is that if there is going to be a snub, and we've seen it happen again, it's going to be for the film that maybe is not as artsy, is not as indie, especially those international international voters. Are they going to go for something that's very mainstream in the lead acting category? Now, there's 2 other stats that I have to look at in terms of Cynthia Erivo missing. And that is, one, that she would only be the second lady to get an Oscar nod for a Broadway musical film adaptation in 50 years. I believe the other one is Renee Zellweger for Chicago. Otherwise, if you are the lead of a Broadway musical adaptation, you have historically not gotten in. I mean, look at Meryl Streep for Mamma Mia. Look at Fantasia Barrino for The Color Purple last year. Traditionally, this stat, it's a weird stat, but it is true. She would only be the second one to make it in. Now, obviously, I think her performance is much more monumental. It's much more out there. She's doing a lot more campaigning than like Meryl Streep did for Mamma Mia or Fantasia did for The Color Purple. Also, I think Wicked is a stronger film in Best Picture than Mamma Mia or The Color Purple. But it is something to at least keep in mind for this lead acting category. Also, she would be the first lead to receive an Oscar nod for a deliberate part 1, meaning, I'm not talking Godfather, which was not advertised as Godfather Part 1, but this was very clearly the first half of a 2-part movie. In a similar way that Dune was, in a similar way the Lord of the Rings movies was, she would be the first ever lead of a Part 1 to get nominated, which is a big stat. That is a big stat. So if she is to get nominated, yes, she got BAFTA, yes, she got SAG, yes, she got Critics' Choice, yes, she got Golden Globe, but she would also be the first person ever to get an Oscar nomination for lead role for a Part 1. She would also be the second actress to get a Oscar nod for a Broadway musical film adaptation role in 50 years, next to Renee Zellweger. So I think those 2 stats were big glaring ones. But then it's not just about her missing. I've also got to think about who is going to get in. who is going to get in and take that spot, essentially, for Cynthia Erivo. And ultimately, that's why I did take her out. If there was not an appetizing next pick, I would leave her in. But Fernanda Torres is peaking at the right moment. I mean, if you watched my video for that review, you've seen the Brazilians love that movie. They flooded the comment section with love and adoration for Fernanda Torres. The love is there internationally, but also it's starting to bleed into America. Like, I love Fernanda Torres' performance. A lot of people love that performance, and her winning Golden Globe made a lot of people go check out that movie where maybe they wouldn't have watched that screener, especially with this extended week of voting. Maybe they wouldn't have watched that screener, but because they had more time and they saw the Golden Globes, they were saying, hey, let's watch this performance. I mean, this is a performance that beat Angelina Jolie for Maria. It beat Pamela Anderson for The Last Showgirl. These other contenders that I think could get in, Fernanda Torres beat them at the Golden Globes. So I think there's a real good shot Fernanda Torres is peaking at the right time. Also, let's look at the last time an actress missed after winning the Golden Globe for Best Golden Globe Drama Actress. You would have to go to 1988 to find the last time that an actress missed. But that year, there were 3 winners for that category, and at least one of those winners did get an Oscar nomination. So the last time that one actress alone won the Golden Globe for Best Actress Drama and didn't get nominated at the Oscars, zip. Every single actress, except for that year where there was a 3-way tie, that has won the Golden Globe for drama has gotten a nomination for an Oscar. I think that's enough to tell me that Fernanda Torres is not only getting in, but she is a lock. I'm going to say it right now. This is my no guts, no glory prediction. Fernanda Torres is a lock for that Oscar nomination. She would be the first actress ever to win the Golden Globe for Best Drama Actress and not get into Best Actress at the Oscars. So that's enough for me to put her even above Cynthia Erivo in the 4th spot. But now the question is Cynthia Erivo, am I going to take her out for Marianne Jean-Baptiste? And part of me is just kind of standing by my soapbox of saying that Marianne Jean-Baptiste is not only one of the best performances of the year, but I've been saying for months now that she's going to get in, and to take her out at the last minute, I would feel so heartbroken because I've been really standing by this Marianne Jean-Baptiste prediction for so long. And here's what I have to back up the evidence to support the nomination, if you will. And hear me out, because this is an important one. The last time someone swept New York film critics, LA film critics, and the National Society of Film Critics, which are the 3 biggest critics groups in America, and missed the Oscars, was Sally Hawkins in Happy Go Lucky, also a Mike Leigh film, but that was decades ago. That was like 2007 or 2008. Every other actress who has gotten all 3 of those has made it in. Who was a surprise a few years ago? Penelope Cruz for Parallel Mothers. Everyone went, how the hell did Parallel Mothers? How did Penelope Cruz get in? It's because she had New York, LA, and National Society of Film Critics. Now, that is not a stat to ride or die by, because as we said, Sally Hawkins missed for Happy Go Lucky, which was also a Mike Leigh film. So part of me is saying, if this is just another Mike Leigh film, another Sally Hawkins 2.0, the only difference is that Marianne Jean-Baptiste, she is a previous nominee. And a lot of people are saying, well, why would you take Cynthia Erivo out? She'd be the only previous nominee. That is not true. Now, Marianne Jean-Baptiste would also fulfill that stat as a previous nominee. Also, I just feel like there's more passion behind her performance than there was for Sally Hawkins back in the day. Like, I feel like everyone is championing this performance who sees it. Now, the big downfall is that her movie is nowhere else. Like, it's not even like Fernanda Torres, who's going to get in for Best International Feature for I'm Still Here. Like, Hard Truths is not getting in anywhere else. So I think that's the one biggest knock for Marianne Jean-Baptiste, is that her film is nowhere to be seen in any other categories, maybe original screenplay on a good day. So my biggest fear is that ultimately not enough people are watching it, and Bleecker Street is distributing it, so no one's watching it. And so that is my biggest thing, is am I going to put her in because she got those 3 Critics Awards, just like Penelope Cruz did, or am I going to take her out because ultimately she got the same trifecta that Sally Hawkins did for the same director's work, and ultimately her film is just nowhere else to be seen, not enough people watched it. That's my biggest dilemma. Do I predict something because I want to be a little different and I want to stand by Marianne Jean-Baptiste's work and her performance? And ultimately, I've agonized over it. I've gone back and forth and back and forth. And ultimately, you know what? screw it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to predict her. I know it's going to piss a lot of people off because I love Cynthia Erivo. Don't get me wrong. And I know a lot of people do too. And you know what? I'm probably going to be wrong at the end of the day. And I know this kind of goes against everything I was saying at the top of the video, where I just want to get 4 out of 5. And honestly, putting Cynthia Erivo in there with Carla Sofia Gascon, Mikey Madison, and Demi Moore would at least guarantee 4 out of 5 if they all make it. With Fernanda Torres, it could be 5 out of 5. And even if Marianne Jean-Baptiste gets in instead of Erivo, I'm still going 4 for 5. But honestly, I feel so deep down in my heart certain that Marianne Jean-Baptiste is going to be an Oscar nominee for Hard Truths. And I can see it now, the snub, and I can see my face with that snub being so devastated by it. And I would honestly be very upset at Cynthia Erivo missing too. So maybe I put them both in, and then I take out like Gascon or Madison. No, I'm not going to do that. I just think those top 3 are so secure. So you know what? I'm going to do it. I'm going to keep Cynthia Erivo at the number 6 spot. It pains me to do it, and I will say one more time, I love her performance. She will be getting a Pickle Award nomination from me. I think it's actually very funny because a lot of these actresses that are on the bubble are still going to just get a Pickle nominee for me. But I just think for right now, because I also want to have a few predictions that are a little bit different from other people's. Like, I don't want to make it seem like I'm just kind of going with the herd and going with the critical mind, group think. So for that reason, I'm going to say Marianne, I can't pronounce her name because her last name is Jean-Baptiste, so I always say Marianne. You're going to hear it in a lot of videos coming soon and in the past that I've said it. Marianne Jean-Baptiste is going to be my 5th slot there. And I do still think there's a world if Jamie Lee Curtis gets in and Pamela Anderson get in, I will not be surprised. It would be Nyad 2.0 where you get SAG and then you end up coming along for the ride. But the thing is, Pamela Anderson didn't even get shortlisted at BAFTA, so I'm not as confident for her. I'm actually more confident in Jamie Lee Curtis getting in than Pamela Anderson. And that's another reason why I'm also not really buying the Jamie Lee Curtis nomination, because it feels just a little disingenuous that like Pamela Anderson's grand return to acting, her big moment, she doesn't get in, but her co-star who just won an Oscar 2 years ago gets in. I think that's also part of why I'm not predicting Jamie Lee Curtis, but Angelina Jolie also, if she gets in, I mean, it's very much like Kristen Stewart, where you're in a Pablo Larraín movie, you miss SAG, you miss BAFTA, but you somehow still make it on Oscar morning. So that would be the Kristen Stewart pipeline there if it were to happen. But I think Torres, the more and more I talked about it, the more I'm convinced that's a lock, because no one has ever won the Globe for drama actress and missed the Oscar, and the only time that happened was in 1988 for a tie. So I'm going to stay with that for Best Actress. I might change it. Keep an eye on the Awards Expert app, because I might change it at the last minute and just ultimately decide. Instead, I'm just going to put in Cynthia Erivo at the last minute because I might have a change of heart or a change of mind. But okay, let's get to Best Picture, because I don't even have to rattle off the top 8. I think they're all locked. I think I've seen some people predicting a Dune snub. I still don't think that's going to happen. I think these top 8 are safe. Anora is safe. Emilia Perez is safe. Conclave, Brutalist, Complete Unknown, Wicked, Substance, Dune Part 2. Those are all safe. That is the order I'm putting it in now, but I'm not really concerned on what's going to win. We'll talk about it in the future predictions when we get closer. I don't think this is a time. We're already an hour in. I don't want to waste all your time telling you why I think maybe Anora still has a chance, even though it blanked at the Globes, and why I don't think Emilia Perez can win, because I don't see it winning screenplay or director. But we'll get to that at another time. Really, I'm focused on these last 2 slots. There are 4 movies seemingly competing for 2 slots. Those 4 movies are A Real Pain, Nickel Boys, Sing Sing, and September 5. Now, Critics' Choice went with Sing Sing and Nickel Boys. PGA went with A Real Pain or September 5. Now, the best way I can recommend for you to win your Oscar poll brackets, whatever you have with your friends, is either go all in on Critics' Choice or all in on PGA, because the chances are it's never going to mirror both. Because let's be honest, PGA rarely goes 10 for 10. Critics' Choice very rarely goes 10 for 10. But if you get one right in each, then you're getting 9 for 10, which I think is still pretty good. So if you predict A Real Pain and September 5, the chances are you're going to go 9 for 10. You're going to be very happy. If you go Sing Sing and Nickel Boys, you're probably going to go 9 for 10, and you're going to be very happy. Now, if you want to go 10 for 10, and that's kind of what I'm going for, I am going to tell you why I'm going to edge with A Real Pain and Sing Sing over September 5 and Nickel Boys, respectfully. First off, the lone screenplay stat is still just in my head. It's in my brain. And right now, Nickel Boys just fits that bill. Nickel Boys, it could be the Women Talking of the Year where it gets screenplay and picture. But if it doesn't get picture and it just gets screenplay, that would fulfill the lone screenplay stat. I also just think there's very little distribution. Even Sing Sing, I feel like that got, the ball was dropped with the distribution for Sing Sing theatrically, but it is back in theaters. Like, you can go see it. Whereas Nickel Boys is still very tough, to see. Like, it didn't really get a good trickling out in America. Maybe international audiences saw it. Actually, I can tell you that probably didn't, because it had a terrible showing at BAFTAs. It still got into adapted screenplay, but it really didn't have a lot of international support. So if Nickel Boys gets in, I think it would have to be off of just a real passion for those people who are putting it at the very top of their list. It would need a lot of number one votes to get in, because I just don't know if the international support is there. And this is such an international thing. It's not just Americans voting for this. Which is why I'm a little worried for Nickel Boys. I also just don't know what their package is. If they do end up getting nominated, are they going to get a surprise nomination for Ingenue Ellis? Are they going to get in for cinematography? The fact of the matter is, I'm predicting a snub pretty much everywhere but screenplay. So that's why I took it out. And especially looking at it next to Sing Sing, Sing Sing at least had a very strong BAFTA showing. Yes, it didn't get Best Film, but it got Clarence Maclin, Coleman Domingo, and Screenplay, which is all the three things that it got longlisted for at BAFTA, which I think is super good. I mean, the fact that it had such a good BAFTA day, and BAFTA is the biggest voting body, I think is a very good sign. I think the downfall for Sing Sing is that it didn't get much of anything at Globes, and it had a very bad PGA showing. It didn't get in for PGA. So neither did Nickel Boys, though, get into PGAs. So for this one, I'm going Sing Sing, because I also think the ceiling is higher in terms of nominations. I think Sing Sing is going to get lead acting. We know that for sure, because Coleman Domingo is going to come along for the ride. But there is potential also for it to get screenplay, supporting actor, and even song. So if it can get 5 nominations, I mean, that's a pretty good package. Whereas Nickel Boys right now, I think, is 3 at most. At most, it's picture, screenplay, cinematography, and I really don't think cinematography is happening now. So at most it's probably 2, and that would be what Women Talking was. It would be what Past Lives is. So even if Sing Sing only gets Coleman Domingo, still I think a leading acting nomination carries a lot more weight than even an adapted screenplay or cinematography nomination. So that is why I'm edging Sing Sing for that 10th spot. As for the 9 spot between September 5 and A Real Pain, I did go back and forth on this a lot too. And I think the whole thing that is making me think September 5 should be a lock is because the Globe PGA combo rarely misses. Only once, I think, in recent memory has something gotten in a Globe and PGA and missed. And I think that was Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, which was more than 10 years ago. So the fact that September 5 got in, Globe drama alone should have locked it in. But the fact of the matter is, it's also not getting a huge package. I think, if anything, editing and screenplay are kind of the ceiling for that film. I don't think it's going to get any acting. I also don't think it's getting anywhere close to directing. I don't think it's getting a lot of text. And also, it just feels like such a late surger where, like, we're only really now seeing it kind of pop off. And by now, maybe it's just a little too late. Whereas A Real Pain, it kind of fell off for a little bit, but I think PGA really brought it back into the conversation. And the thing you've also got to think about is momentum. And who has been seen on all these award shows giving speeches, accepting awards? It's Kieran Culkin. And I really just think because Kieran Culkin is so high profile, because Jesse Eisenberg is a pretty well-known name. I mean, look at Sing Sing. They have Coleman Domingo, but otherwise it's a pretty, unknown cast, unknown director. Nickel Boys especially. Like, I don't think Ramel Ross is a household name for many. The cast is not necessarily full of celebrities. September 5 has some famous faces in it, but again, not really a celebrity-led vehicle, whereas A Real Pain is. I mean, Kieran Culkin and Jesse Eisenberg are doing the rounds. They're campaigning it really well. So honestly, I think Real Pain is looking more and more like a lock with every day. Now, the downfall for Real Pain is simply that Searchlight has a complete unknown. So if a complete unknown is their 100% horse in the race, it could hurt Searchlight here. Same with A24 as well. I mean, they're campaigning The Brutalist, so they might have a tough time with Sing Sing. But I think ultimately, those studios have shown in the past that they can still be strong with multiple contenders under their belts. So ultimately, I'm going to go with A Real Pain, because I also think it's a little weird if Culkin were to win every single award and sweep and not be in a Best Picture nominated film. I've always said it's been weird from the start. So I honestly think, to spare the weirdness of him getting all these wins without a Best Picture nomination, I'm going to go A Real Pain. Also, A Real Pain got into screenplay at Globes, which is pretty huge because they only nominate 5 screenplays or 6 screenplays at Globes. So the fact that it got in shows that it might have been a bigger contender than we thought. So the fact that it's a real contender, A Real Pain, to get a real win in screenplay, if for some reason, let's say Anora or The Substance split votes and maybe they go for Jesse Eisenberg, I think all of that is leaning toward A Real Pain getting that 9 spot. So I think A Real Pain is in the 9, Sing Sing in the 10. So if you pick both Critics' Choice or both PGA, you're likely to go 9 out of 10. If you pick one or the other, I hope you pick the right one. But if you pick Real Pain, I think Real Pain's really safe right now. So I don't know. I think if you have a Real Pain in there, you're probably at least going to get 9. It's really that 10 spot that's pretty hard. But I think, honestly, the safe thing is to pick either Sing Sing or Nickel Boys. And if you pick Nickel Boys, maybe go through and maybe give it a few more nominations if you can, because, you never know what a film's package is going to be at the end of the day. And if you don't predict Sing Sing, I would not go over, get over nominating it, predicting it in like song or supporting actor. Like, I think if you're predicting a Sing Sing snub, then I wouldn't predict Clarence Maclin. I wouldn't predict Like a Bird for song. I wouldn't even maybe predict it for screenplay. So, sometimes you just got to kind of work with the puzzle, see what's getting in, and by getting in, what is coming out and what is coming along for the ride. What is the best picture package? So ultimately, one more time for you who might be listening, who don't have this visual aid, which I think is probably going to be impossible to keep up with if you can't actually see me do this. But for those who are wondering, this is my Best Picture 10 predicted lineup. Nora, Amelia Perez, Conclave, The Brutalist, Complete Unknown, Wicked Part 1, The Substance, Dune Part 2, A Real Pain, and Sing Sing. And if that's a lineup, it's a pretty good lineup. Some I don't like in that slate, but ultimately a very strong slate when all is said at the end of the day. So that is it. My voice is tired. All my notes are here. They're confuddled around. I had a great time kind of doing all the research and making some decisions on the spot. I'm sure I pissed some people off, but I'm sure I also got a lot of people excited to fill out their own Oscar predictions ballots. And if you predict the Oscars, let me know down below what you're deferring from me, what predictions that I predicted you might be actually taking a little more seriously now. Let me know, because I always love to hear when someone's like, you know what, I wasn't thinking about Fernanda Torres, but then you told me that no person has ever won Golden Globe and missed, and it made me predict her, and then she got a nomination. Like, I would love to hear stories like that. If you're out there and you listen and you take my advice, I mean, that's so heartwarming and that's so humbling to hear. And if you don't, you say this guy's a fool, let me know kindly in the comments below why. But otherwise, thank you guys so much. I will be back to react tomorrow on Thursday, bright and early, after I've recorded myself shockingly, or maybe not shockingly. Maybe if everything goes as planned, well, I won't be very surprised, but there's going to be some surprises. There just always are. But you can find me reacting to the Oscar nominations tomorrow. I'll give my thoughts briefly on them, and then as the weeks go on, I will be doing my Oscars death race. So I'll be watching every single nominee nominated as long as I can find them, as long as I can track them down. And I'm pretty sure I will be able to, because I live close enough to New York City. I'm very grateful for that. But if you want to join me for the death race, we'll be going through that as well the next few weeks. And then it'll be leading up to my own award show, the Pickle Awards, and my episode of Picture This, where I'll be covering these nominees for Best Picture with my co-host Chad Webb. So we got a lot of fun Oscar stuff planned for the next few months. Otherwise, stay safe, especially if you're in the LA area. Again, my heart goes out to you. If you're giving those people a hard time because your Oscars got delayed, look at yourself in the mirror and change your heart. Otherwise, thank you guys so much for watching this video. Stay tuned, like, subscribe for more, because there's a lot more coming. And have a great rest of your day.